Okay, everybody. We're going to start the next debate, and unfortunately, we don't have that much of a time, and we're going also to have a strict agenda and a strict ending point of the debate. So we're not going to go over time. But anyways, we're going to talk about a really, really important subject: the youth. And I see there are some young people in the audience, some are not, but hopefully we can also have some questions from the audience. And trying to limit the questions to our panelists, so you also have some time to talk. And today we're going to talk about the European Youth Capital. And the European Youth Capital is an award that a city in Europe gets since 2009, that the European Youth Forum, organization for all youth in Europe, actually has started. Back in 2014, the Council of Europe, actually, which is this broader cooperation between European countries, not only limited to the EU, but also other countries, took over the prize and also nominates cities around Europe. So the title is given for empowering young people, boost youth participation and European identities in cities. And if we can get the people on the back actually to lower their voice a bit. That would be great, thank you. So to talk about this topic, about the European Youth Capital, we have a wonderful panel of debaters here with me. The first one on the outer floor is Duedahl. He's the governor of the region of Northern Jutland. He has been the first liberal on his post actually for ever. So that's quite interesting. But also I was researching you a bit, Mads. You also done some tutoring back in your study days when you were a young person. So maybe you have some insights also on how to engage with young people.
I know where to get the cheapest beers in Aalborg.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Well, the next person on our panel, that's Kristoffersen. You're EP candidate of the Alternative, a party in Denmark here. You are specialized in tax laws, but you always also advocate for local governance in cities.
Yes, I think participation is one of the key words for democracy, and I think participation is one of the topics and issues that we really should address in the future. So we should, I think we should develop our democracies because it really needs to. And if you look around the world, you can see that democracies are under pressure.
Yeah. And then we have Konstantin Deda. Is that Dedu?
Hello, everyone.
Okay, Dedu. I see. Yeah, that's right. You're the president of Imago Mundi Youth Association, and also you have been in some projects internationally, also some Erasmus projects around Europe on the youth. And before I give every one of you a time to just present yourself and state what you think is important when talking about the European Youth Capital, I would start with Mads. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, first of all, I'm Mads. I'm the chairman of the committee of the Region North. I like the name governor. I never heard that before. I will use that in the future. First of all, thank you for putting this to a debate. I think the subject is very important. Like you see now around the world, the institution that we know is under a great pressure. War in the middle of Europe, populists pushing the democracy every day, China trying to take Taiwan and stuff like that. So we need to be clear that Europe and togetherness in Europe is very important for the future, because alone we stand very weak, but together we're strong. And I think the youth is a part of this solution, because they are the future of us. So I think the idea about capital is very good. I think the idea that every city should have a mindset being the capital of the youth, the European youth, because we need to push the limits about going into Europe, being a part of the unity of Europe, having a lot of know-how about what is the common values of Europe. And I thought, what are we doing in my region these days to make this unity stronger? And I thought we have at least three things we're trying to do. We are making the EU system supported programs working as well as we can, the Erasmus Plus and something like that. We're trying together with the institutions of education, the high schools, to make a more focus of internationalization, trying to get the young people around seeing Europe, trying to put it in the education. But actually a problem in Denmark is that a lot of people like the Europe, they like language, but they love English and not so much French, German and something like that. So when they are communicating with the rest of the Europe, it's only in English. So we have a kind of a problem right there. And then I think something like that's very important is that we can take other matters and bring them to Europe, like working with culture or green growth or something like that. And when we take the matters of a culture capital, it's very important that we have this capital who is taking all the values from all the cities in Europe. So we're trying in the northern part of Denmark to making our take of culture going outside. We these days, because I can tell you England is under some kind of pressure after the Brexit, we made this appointment with, this deal with Manchester, that we are taking some of the culture from Manchester going to Aalborg and some of Aalborg's culture going to Manchester. And I think that's the main part of what we're trying to do, taking a part of every city and putting it into a capital and putting it into all of Europe, because then we will know each other. Yes, my 2 minutes, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you. And Jan?
Yes, well, I should be honest, when I was invited to this debate, I haven't heard about this, about European youth capitals. But I read something about it, and I thought it's a very good idea. But I also think it could need some improvement, because I actually don't think so many people are aware of this. I do think that Europe, and not Europe just as the EU, but the whole Europe, that's also why I like this concept, needs to have some kind of identity, some common kind of identity. Because if you have that, it's a big obstacle then if you want to fight each other. And we are in a period where we have war in Europe. So planting seeds in the youth, so that the youth knows each other, knows that even if I'm from Albania, or I'm from Serbia, I'm from Lithuania, I'm from Denmark, there's not so much difference anyways. It's still the same things that's in my everyday life. It's about school, it's about boys or girls, music, clothes, those things. To learn those things from each other is more important now than ever.
Thank you. And Konstantin?
Hello everyone. So when it comes to the actual title of this debate, the European Youth Capital, you explained a bit about the history of the concept in itself. Actually, one of the reasons for which the organizers chose the specific topic was that one of the panelists today was supposed to be the mayor of Tirana, the capital of Albania, that you just mentioned in your speech about Europe. Which is this year's European Youth Capital of Europe. While also this year, 2022, was designated by the European Commission as the European Year of Youth. So each year, the Commission dedicates or comes up with a theme for that respective year. This year is the Year of Youth, so there are many things connected to this theme. While in other years it was about environment, for example, climate and so on. When it comes to this debate about young people, it's actually very interesting that I attended this debate with Mads, with Jens, because basically I can also find out, and I'm looking forward to it, to hear a few things about the Danish perspective and how is it that the youths are being somehow tackled with and their needs are being addressed. I also saw in the description of the debate some questions like, what is it like to be a young European these days, and how should legislators accommodate youth? And this is food for thought, and like you said, we probably don't have enough time for this, but also how do we collaborate across European borders to create better conditions for the young, and how do we involve them into being more active at local level and into politics. I actually also done a bit of research, and I saw that at least some statistics from a few years ago, they were saying that a lot of Danish young people are very much aware of the importance of politics, which I found it to be, in numbers, I think it was something like 50-60%. It was one study, which is way higher than what happens in the rest of Europe. So well done in this respect here. What I would like to say first, just in 1 minute, from a European perspective of things. Matt mentioned the Erasmus Plus project. I'm working on various levels within the Erasmus Plus program as president of a local youth organization from Romania, vice president of a European network, and which is called Volunteer Europe, and through this I have the chance to connect with various stakeholders at EU level. If we were to talk, because there's a business stage, if we were to talk from an efficiency point of view, well, the Erasmus Plus program received 26 billion euro for the current financial exercise of the European Union. So from 2021 to 2027. This is a growth of about 50% because it was 14 billion before. On the other hand, if we look at the bigger picture, the budget of the European Union for the same period, 2021-2027, is of about 1,000 billion. So in terms of efficiency, the fact that there are so many politicians, so many of us, so many young people that mention this program means that there's something good about it, and there's a lot of efficiency in what is being done, although, to be honest, much more could be done. And to conclude here, before passing out to you, which will you coordinate us and steer us in this debate. I was also doing some research and saw that lots of the Danish people, the Danish young people, sometimes take a sabbatical year before actually going to the university, and this is one of the reasons for which in Denmark the threshold, the age at which most youngsters finish their academic studies is a bit higher than in the rest of Europe. And in this context, getting more involved in EU projects is a wonderful way of actually knowing the realities of Europe, but also by comparison, knowing where you stand as a Danish and what is actually being provided to you here. Because in all honesty, Danish youth, we could say that they're lucky in comparison to other countries from Western Europe as well, not just from the East, where it's already understood about it.
Thank you for your opening remarks. So you already mentioned it, and that's going to be one part of the first question I'm going to ask you, everybody. Mads, you mentioned the international focus that has to be for the youth. Jan, you mentioned the European mindset, and you talked about the Erasmus program. I would ask you actually the question, maybe with this or some other points, why do we need a European youth capital, and why do we need youth engagement at a city level and at a local level? And Konstantin, I want you to start, and then we're going that way.
Okay. It's very slogan type to say that youths are the future, but basically this is the reality. And in moments like this, you're mentioning also crisis, war, and so on. I think having a focus on the youth is primordial. This is actually something which should happen all the time, but especially now, because I think we have hard times ahead, and times that will change a lot in the following years. And talking about local level changes, I do feel that at this level, young people are still underrepresented. They're not so much being taken into account, really. They're not involved in decision making. Or I know that there are participative budgets approaches in different places and in different municipalities. I know, for example, that in Denmark there's a lot of focus on giving power to the municipalities, and this is probably something that Mads could further develop. But personally, I'm currently involved in various Erasmus Plus projects in which we try with other youth NGOs to do exactly that, to advocate for a stronger involvement of young people in the life of their community and in democratic participation.
Jan?
Well, it's important because democracy is important. And democracy is not something which is in our human genome. It's something that we learn. It's something that we also feel. It's something that we learn to appreciate. So thinking about Europe, 500 million people or something like that, and comparing to the rest of the world, we really need to step up on this. So for me, it's as natural as you put children into school, teach and educate them. For me, it's just as natural as to have communities where you address and learn and feel that there is some kind of European identity and values, because I think that is very important for the future.
Yes, so the first question was, why do we need a youth capital? I think that the best thing about that is you can use it as a way to focus on the European Union and what they give us, what it gives us in our unity. So focus is the main reason you do that. You have a global culture capital each year. Aarhus was 5 years ago or something like that. It was a very good opportunity for the Danes to focus on what can culture do to everyday life. Why do culture matters? This is the same. It's a very good reason and opportunity for everybody to see what do the European Union means for the youth. So I think it's a very good idea to focus, because we need to put some focus on what the European Union is doing for us, because we need to have some legitimation, is it called that? Because a lot of people is asking, you know that it's in Denmark they ask, isn't it just a big bureaucracy? Why are we wasting so many money, and how do they have the power to make so many laws that we have to implement? So we need to put to focus on what is the benefit of the European Union. I think maybe most people have seen it the last year about what happens in Ukraine, and when we stand together we are strong and something like that. But we need this to tell the good stories. And then you asked about why should the local municipalities and region put some pressure on this? Why should we work with this? I have some numbers saying that 70% of all EU legislation is implemented in the municipality and the government. So it's very important for us in everyday life. It's very important for Denmark to, what they decide in the European Union. So if we don't work every day to putting focus on this, people will just forget how important the European Union is. And in a very local perspective, I can just say Aalborg, the city I live in, the biggest city in this region, is growing these days. It's the green growth, and we need some labor, highly well-educated labor power. We can't have that in Denmark alone. We need to focus on all of Europe. So if we need to success in the climate changes, in the green growth, we also need to could have some very highly educated people from all over Europe. So we need to have that focus in local perspective as well.
Well, thank you. And if you have any comments on each other's remarks, just raise your hand, and then it's possible for you to answer. But I would actually like to go a bit deeper into this youth empowerment that the European Youth Capital actually should do in cities and municipalities. So I wanted to start with you, Mads, actually, and that's the background for the question is that the European Youth Capital never came up to the Nordics. It has been in the Baltics once, but it's never been in Denmark. It's never been in Sweden. It's never been in Norway or Finland. Why is it that we didn't get the prize, to say so? Are we actually bad at youth involvement, or could we be better at any point?
Ooh, that's a good question. I actually don't know why, but I can say I think we're doing a lot to involve the youth. As it was said before, they participate in the democracy. Young people in Denmark do participate. They think that democracy is very important. But in Denmark, we tend to see a lot about our own democracy, our own nation, and not so much in the union. And that's the way of Danes. We've been a nation since we the Vikings, and we're very interested in Denmark. But now, when the war is on our backyard, when the Baltics are occupied or threatened to be occupied, I think it's being a little bit closer to the Danes now, to the youth, that if we don't stick together, this is a very major problem from all of our values. So maybe in the future we'll have a lot of perspective about that. I actually think it's very important for us to keep on doing this, to be better at this part, because a lot of young people in Denmark don't feel well in their own life. I'm working with healthcare system every day. We have this very big mental health care crisis in Denmark. I think the Nordic countries are the worst in the world right now about stress and mental illnesses. A new survey in Denmark this year showed that half of all the young girls between 16 and 24, they are stressed. They have too much stress. And if we ask them why, it's, you know, it's everything, but it's the world, it's war everywhere, you know, you have to, you don't feel any meaning in life, you're not a part of a unity and something like that. I think the European Union is just a part of the solution by bringing a unity and some strong values into the young people's lives, so maybe that's a part of the solution about the healthcare crisis as well.
And just a quick follow-up question. Back when you were younger, when you were actually the chairman of the Liberal Youth Party up in Aalborg, did you feel that that you were underrepresented and that your voice didn't matter as much as it should do? And has it become better since?
Yeah, actually everything has become better. Now we have a new governor in Northern Jutland. No, actually the first year I moved to Aalborg, started at the university, we didn't feel any kind of influence. All the young parties. So the youth parties in Aalborg were together, and we did go to the mayor and said we need something. And actually the city council, they listened. So after a year they gave us this house called the House of Youth Democracy, and every party could be in this building. So now in Aalborg we have one building where every young person who is involved in democracy can go and can meet, you know, different kind of parties. And you know, can be a bit clever every day. So if you're pushing the city council hard enough, you can get what you want. So I think it's becoming better.
So we have just to push you a bit more.
Just
in
push the mayor, not the governor.
Not the governor. Okay, cool. Well, Jan, you mentioned underrepresentation of the youth before. Do you think that the youth still is underrepresented, and what can we do to represent them a bit more in the political system?
Oh, I think there's a lot of things that could be done, but a lot of things must also be done by the youth itself. I think there's some kind of a systemic way to involve, and then there's something on a whole local municipality level. If I should start on the systemic level, I think, in a broad terms, that most of the youth really wants to engage, but most youth also wants to engage in specific topics. It could be the climate case, it could be a gender case, or it could be something like that. But getting into party politics as we know it, it's not so interesting for most young people, because if you look at it from outside, it's a lot of people who's just yapping at each other, and it's not like, okay, does they really do anything? And then to look for an NGO or something like that who says, we want we want action on the climate case. Okay, I go over there. I think that's some kind of systemic thing you have to look at. And then on a more local level, municipalities, I think there is in Denmark ways to have youth councils, things like that. So I think some of the formal thing is there. And then just a remark on the question you had before on why hasn't there been a Danish city who's been the youth capital? And I don't know the actual answer, but I think a little bit what you said, that it might reflect the way Denmark and Danish politicians looks at EU and Europe. It's like something that's far and distant. It's away. It's not really a part of the daily agenda in the media and the news. So why should it be that why should it be on the scale and the scope for the youth?
Yes, and Konstantin, well, now we talked a bit about the Danish experience from the two Danish politicians here, and I'm not sure you care, you know the Danish context, but I would also like to ask you, well, why do you think that we didn't get a European Youth Capital here in the Nordics? Because I think you have worked together with a lot of the other cities in your experience, and how is it possible that it didn't come this far in the north?
Well, I think one possible explanation, I was actually checking even yesterday the list of candidates for the title, and I think one possible explanation is that there were not applications from the cities from the northern parts, and it could relate very much with what Jens was saying, that maybe there's also this idea of Danish we do it our way, Mads was saying as well, and maybe not so much interest in clicking or joining with other EU level initiatives like this one, although there are other, of course there are in many ways collaborations between Danish organizations, politics and everything with the rest of Europe. But I actually also wanted to add to some of the comments that you two made. So first, referring to the broader context and why is it that, for example, Danish politicians, Danish young people should be more involved in what's happening also at EU level? Well, to put things in a broader perspective, just like Mads was explaining, Denmark is now part of the European Union, which has close to 500 million inhabitants, more or less, but in a very interesting international context. I'm not talking necessarily about the war, but about the fact that this select club or association, of close to 500 million if we add Norway and other countries around as well, is part of a world in which the EU has about 20% of the world's GDP. So we are 7.5 billion people on the planet, or a bit more already, close to 8 billion, and 500 million of these have a fifth of the world's economy and wealth. So from this respect, either we talk about Danish youth, French youth, German youth, and so on, and more recently, people from Eastern Europe, we are part of a select club of people who own a fifth of the world's richness, while we represent a very small part of the world's population. So this comes also with a bit of responsibility, and also this puts us in a context in which even Danish young people, especially as they are more interested in politics, should understand that the world does not end at Danish borders, and the interests of the Danish should not end at Danish borders. Just one thing about this, and then I want to add something on the mental health issues as well. The Shanghai organization just took birth some months ago. The Shanghai Organization for Economic Cooperation basically will copycat a bit of what Europe has done from an economical point of view, and provide a much bigger integration of the Asian economies. This will change the world dramatically in 10-15 years ago. What happens now in terms of crisis, even with Ukraine, is actually just part of much greater development than that. So if, for example, the Danish companies and the people, the young people that will work in Danish companies, if they want to keep having jobs in the future and keep having a prosperous society, will also need to take this international context into consideration. When it comes to mental health, I actually remember I was reading some statistics, just like Matt said, about the mental health issues from northern countries, and I was actually doing this some years ago, 2012, 2013. I was living in Greece at the peak of the economic crisis there, and there were protests on the streets and things like that. But in terms of mental health issues, Greece was much better, and Romania, which has a much lower economy, was much better than northern countries, even at the peak of that crisis. And my question was why? Well, it does have to do, it does seem that Danish do a lot of very good things, but that not everything is perfect in this society either, and there are probably some issues as well here. I could see, for example, just to set an example, people were in crisis, they were going to the ATMs, but still they would give €1 for a coffee and laugh all together and try to get things out of their system. So probably here there are a lot of more things to build, and in this respect, even in this respect, having young Danish people interact more with Europeans would actually be a very good way of providing feedback for the young people on what do they do really good, what does Danish society does really good, and what are those things that could be improved. And this is something you can learn from each other, and socializing and interacting with other youth through all these programs that the European Union provides. A European Union which is really imperfect, but we have a saying, and I'll conclude on this. We have a Romanian saying that I really like a lot. I will try to do an approximate translation in English. It's very bad with the bad, but it's even worse without the bad. I think we can translate what bad is in this respect. Yeah? Okay.
It makes perfect sense for me.
Yeah.
At this point, we're a bit short on time, so will it be a possibility for the people to ask a question? And I see one question over there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your thoughts. When we talk about youth empowerment, I cannot help but think about, in particularly, the universities in Denmark, which in the last 20 years have become less democratic institutions. Of course, we call it they have been professionalized, but decision-making bodies have been changed into advisory bodies and that kind of thing. So my question to you is, how can we talk about youth empowerment when the institutions where young people spend most of their time are becoming less democratic?
Yes, I think this is a great question. I think, who wants to start on that question? Oh, Jan, you want to start?
Well, I can try, because I think, it is a very good question. I think it reflects the situation of how democracy is today in Denmark. Because I think, if we look back on the last 20 years in Denmark, I think democracy have been, there's been a lot of attacks on democracy. Not just long, continuous attack on the democracy. You're mentioning one on the universities. I can mention other things. I can mention a law which was passed in 2013 called the Offentlighedsloven. A lot of things, but most of it is a big centralization of power. And I think that is one of the most dangerous attacks on democracy as we know it in Denmark. Because if you centralize power and you only have institutions out there, it could be municipalities, regions, universities, etc., which actually don't really have power to make decisions. If municipalities has budgets that has been laid down on them, if people from the central administration says, okay, you might have funds you could use, but we have passed this law which says you cannot use those funds. That I think the centralization is one of the attacks on democracy. It's in Danish democracy, and I think it's under that umbrella. And of course we should do something about that, because otherwise it doesn't feel like democracy. And democracy should not only be formal, it should also be in reality.
Okay, and then I give the same question to you, Mads.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I don't know if... I know the universities have changed through the years. I've been a big criticist about the taxometerordning. It's just terrible. The Mars University, you should try and change that. But I never thought about that the democracy was under pressure because of the development of the universities. Actually, no. I don't. Maybe that something has been a little less democratic, but I think there's a lot of other possibilities when you're a young person in Denmark to be a part of the democracy. You can just go be a part of a party or a football club or something like that. I don't think that that's a main reason for the democracy or for the participation of young people. Because yes, you use a lot of hours on the university, but when I finished the university, I went home and had a lot of other hobbies. So I don't think that's the main reason for that. That's just my opinion.
And then we have Konstantin.
I think in this respect we have a very good moderator who is actually the vice president of the students, the universities, students, university associations. I think you should take your coat off as a moderator and actually try to reply to this one as well, because you're in a very good position to do that.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, way better than
Let's
mine.
hear
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, well, I have opinions on that. Of course, I have. Well, in my experience, yeah, well, power is centralized at universities. Of course, it is. In my experience, the democratic rights of students, the democratic rights of also of the researchers and scientists at universities have been limited through the years, and that in my opinion also reflects a bit fewer democratizing words at the universities. In that regard, people are tending to less to care in the future about how the university functions. And in my opinion, students should be engaged actively in their education. They should be actively engaged in how the university has to look like in 5, in 10, in 50 years. So undemocratizing the university is, in my opinion, the worst thing that you can do. But yeah, the winds don't seem to change in that way. We see more professionalization, and the more driven about the university is more driven by the market and by political goals than actually by the people who are in it itself. And well, for now we actually have academic freedom at some point, but we already see attacks on academic freedom through the limitations of research results and stuff like that, and we see it in Denmark as well. We had a beef meat scandal some years ago, where scientists were limited by the beef industry to publish their science results. And that's actually one of the symptoms I see of the limitation of university democracy. But I don't think we have time to discuss the university democracy in a broader sense for now. So I think are there any more questions? Because I think we're like closing down for now. It doesn't seem like that. I think you just have 1 minute each just to make a closing remark on this. I'm so sorry we don't have more time to discuss this topic, but yeah, there are some other people coming on the stage as well. So I think we take it that way out. So Konstantin, please start.
1 minute. Okay, just very fast. For me, all these meetings here were also a very interesting way to get to know a bit more of the Danish context and a bit more of the Danish realities. I would have been for example, very curious for the thoughts for the organizer of this festival. Maybe next year when they have debates on the youth, also to invite someone maybe from the Danish Youth Council. And more of the universities and more of the youth associations to be represented in discussions like this with local politicians, which I think this would prove really, really interesting. But also not just for themselves, but also for any potential European audience and participants to the event. And thank you for the insights.
Well, I think youth is always important, because youth is the future. So if you want a prosperous future, also in the EU and the whole Europe, I think youth capitals in Europe are important. Making connections between the young people across borders, I think it's one of the best investments we can make in the future.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Barry, for inviting us. I think this was a very good debate. It was very important to hear what Konstantin he brought to this, so thank you for that. I started saying this was important because of the democracy and because of the war and everything else, but what you said about mental health care, it just opened my eyes. Yes, it's a very good and important idea to bring us together with the rest of the Europe to see our own life in perspective. Maybe we can give something to the rest of Europe, and the rest of Europe can give something to us, because we have this fantastic healthcare system and fantastic welfare state, but it's making people sick. It's a very big problem for us. So this could open the door for a very important debate for the healthcare system as well. So thank you for opening my eyes for that. Thank you for the time. And about the youth capital, maybe we should send an application someday. I would talk to some mayors around the country and ask, why not?
I think Aalborg has very good chances on this,
Yeah.
with all the dynamics and all the young
I'll
people
take a meeting
there.
with the mayor and say he has to pay for this. He'll be glad.
That seems really great. Well, thank you for this debate, and thank you for also asking some questions, and thank you to the panel. Just give them a hand.
Thank you.